Hello, everybody. Welcome to Business Chat with Jeong Media. This is Isaac here again on episode 5. This time we have Shane Younan, my friend up in Chicago still, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why I just did the Midwestern wave for you there. Just
I wasn't aware of that.
it's inherent.
I see. But so excited to have him here. And talk a little bit about his experience, his professional experience, as well as share some of mine along the way. But also, we can get started on the point that you just made before we went live about how we met. We can start there.
Yeah.
So how did we meet?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd have to kind of go back in our LinkedIn messages. It was definitely LinkedIn, though. I can tell you that. I can't exactly remember how we connected, but I remember following along your posts because you're posting a lot of good stuff that was really important to me at the time.
That's right. Yeah.
And I actually remember going a step further and setting up a little meeting with you, and the results of that meeting yielded some great results. So,
great!
I remember that, and yeah, super grateful. So glad to be here today. Definitely.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we're so happy to have you here. And yeah, I guess continue with that topic of how we met. We talked a little bit about, I remember you were managing or starting to manage Facebook ads for a dentist. And I was helping you give some ideas on what could be done. And how did that go?
It was going great, actually. Okay. Yeah, we really met when I was very into my side hustles at that point. So, it wasn't so much regarding my day job that we would talk about, but yeah, I was running social media campaigns for small, medium-sized businesses that I often met through my day job, but it helped with completely, random things. So, but yeah, I think I connected with you when I started to kind of get on the more advanced side of that. Wanting to actually be able to trace, dollars spent to dollars earned for those few, small businesses like the dentist, right? That you mentioned. So yeah, it was definitely a fun learning experience, and it always felt good, doing it successessly, right?
Yeah, so, that's the best feeling.
Yeah, well, the worst feeling, and to get paid for it at the same time. So
that's right. That's
a win-win.
Yeah, that's great. And I think at the time you were also working with, your main job was to sell advertisements for public transportation. Is it on like the bus and stuff like that, or on an app?
Yeah, so more the latter. So I would sell transit mobile advertising on transit tracking apps.
Okay.
And when I was doing the side hustle, I was probably about 7 years into selling that. So I have a lot of experience selling that to small businesses. It was definitely interesting over the years seeing how kind of advanced small business owners got. Back when I started there, I'd have to look at the year, but I was explaining what mobile advertising was. Small business owners didn't know CPMs or clicks or CTR, CTA. That was foreign to them completely. And I'm over here explaining predictive geo-targeting, which is what the company I was with at the time was doing, where basically we would send ads based on where we know people are going to be. So imagine doing that like 15 years ago, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Not that long ago, but it's just been funny seeing the progression and how advanced small businesses are getting and really tracking things and what they can manage on their own. And kind of seeing that progression. So
yeah, that's really neat, because I think you had a lot of experience with small business. So I guess we can touch on, while we're on the topic of small business, what some of those challenges that they faced when it came to advertising. Because with me running a marketing agency as well, I see some of the commonalities of the challenges. But you've been working with small business a lot longer than I have. What are some of the things that you've seen early on that seems to continue to this day, and what are some things that are happening more recently?
Yeah, great question. So, some more common things, of course, it's going to vary, I think, from vertical to vertical. But from my days of selling advertising, where I was really selling across all verticals, from, dentists to colleges to barbers and anything in between, that was really situated near public transit. Some more common things I would say is just tracking your dollars spent to actual dollars in your register, right? Clicks are always great. You have to be on social media, right? Shares are great. Comments and interactions are wonderful. But how many of those dollars are you spending advertising to people that are coming in already, for example, versus reaching new people, more top of the funnel, right? I think that's always going to be a challenge. I think there's more and more, there's better ways to address it now, definitely. Maybe some more advanced than others, again, depending on the vertical. But yeah, I think I think that's a big thing, though. I think that's basically even if you have it set up, if you think about it, to track a campaign really well, it's still very difficult to track, an ROI on advertising. It's almost like the old saying, 50% works, right? You just don't know which 50%.
No, that's completely right. And you brought up a really good point about the challenges when it comes to tracking, if the money you're spending is actually working or not, especially when it comes to branding, right? Branding is one of the things that how do you track that? What do you measure? But ultimately, I mean, at least how we try to operate is we look at the revenue results. Like if there's no results on the revenue side, obviously the branding isn't working. And of course, branding is something, at least from our experience, does take quite a bit of time, and there's so many different ways to do it. But we focus on just mostly doing that with video, pushing out a lot of relevant content to get those clicks, get those shares, get those comments that you mentioned. But also at the end of the day, it has to bring in, those substantial business results. Because for small business, especially, at least from my experience, every dollar really counts. So they're working.
They won't let you forget it.
Yeah, so there's definitely good and bad working. I wouldn't say bad, but pros and cons of working with small business versus a bigger corporate that has a little bit more funding available to work with.
Time and it's a time thing, it's a budget thing, right? It's a resource thing. It's always been something I admire, which I'm sure you do too, working with small businesses, how you can't tell them anything, right? That's what I love about small business owners. It could be the most basic thing. You should probably have a website. There's still going to be a small business owner out there that tells you, I've been around for 40 years. I don't think I need a website. What are you going to say to that?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, what I say is don't sell the unsellable. Just skip. Yeah. Just move on to the next one. But speaking of moving on, let's move on to your current role at GetUpside. I personally have some personal experience with using this app, but you can fill me in on the exact details of this company and your experience. But for me, when I started using GetUpside, was for getting discounts on gas. I just graduated from college, so every penny counted. And I think the best part was when I signed up my brother for it through my referral code, I was getting money through it too.
Yeah,
it was like a couple dollars. He was not happy about it, but whatever.
The referral program continues to be very popular to this day. Definitely.
Yeah.
GetUpside, to consumers, it's a cashback platform, right? So like you mentioned, built our backbone in the fuel industry. So the co-founders back in 2016, it's a startup out of DC, essentially proved out the concept, the methodology in the fuel industry, primarily because, not only are gas station owners small business owners at the end of the day, which a lot of people don't really think about, but they make such slim profit on actual fuel sales, right? And so the idea was, let's put this to the toughest test that they could, right? And that's, let's see if we can create new and incremental profit on fuel sales in particular for these, gas stations.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, it worked incredibly well. As you can see, there's still a ton of gas stations on the platform, more and more every single day. And lately, and what I was primarily brought on to do is help build our local restaurant footprint. There's some really great things that we're able to bring to brick and mortar businesses that really kind of even out the playing field of what we see online. A lot of the things I'm sure you'll talk about that you're familiar with, and kind of bring it back to brick and mortar, right? To walking into a store or to sitting down at a restaurant and interacting with them directly. So, there's a whole merchant side as well, that I can always get into. So,
I was curious, how does it work for those small businesses? I know, I completely understand what you mean by gas station having small margins, because my dad used to have a Shell gas station along with the auto repair shop, and we got rid of it because there was no profit in it at the time. It was like 2008 too. It was financial was difficult, but how does it work for the business? It is more for me, because I'm curious. How does the business benefit from GetUpside directly? Is it the financial end, or is it just trying to bring the foot traffic in?
Yeah, so essentially, GetUpside is as pay per performance as it gets.
Okay.
So we bring in new profit on every single transaction, or the merchant actually doesn't pay a cent. So they're kind of protected, where if their existing customers use GetUpside like normal and come in like normal, we don't create any incremental profit, like get them to spend more than they ever have in the past, and they're not paying for a transaction they're going to see anyway.
I see.
Which is a huge problem, in a lot of different verticals, I think. But if you think about restaurants in particular, you get someone to try your food for the very first time and they get hooked just because you have great food.
Yeah.
Should you really have to pay that same, fee for, that person ordering from that platform, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, essentially we're able to prove new profit on every transaction we bring in.
Wow.
And make it really easy for the merchant to see the value we bring and the impact we make.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. That tracking must be insane then. I can't imagine. Is it all done with like AI on the back end to track all these transactions, or?
Yeah, there's definitely some machine learning involved that will, essentially will baseline new customers that we bring in, and we'll see how much they spend the first time that they come in. We'll focus on getting them to spend more or to come in more frequently.
Yeah.
It is personalized cashback incentives. So if you open the GetUpside app, you may see different cashback incentives than your wife or your friend, because you have different spending habits. Wow. So it's personalized in that regard as well, where really focus on driving new customers into the merchants on the platform.
That's really neat. So let's talk a little bit about restaurant businesses and your experience in that specific vertical, their challenges, and some of the solutions that you bring with GetUpside, or other things that you may have done in the past. Because we just signed a deal with a restaurant that will be helping in terms of their branding and video content and stuff like that. But I'm curious as well, and I'm sure other restaurant owners that may watch this would be curious as well. What are some of the challenges that you're working to solve within GetUpside or beyond GetUpside?
Yeah, so I think really it's about evening the playing field first and foremost. So, for example, if you go to Amazon, we're going to have different Amazon homepages, right? We're going to have different offers based on things we've searched for, clicked on. Maybe we'll get different incentives to purchase them, or different calls to action, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And what's really doing that in the brick and mortar world, right? In small businesses. So I think really what GetUpside's doing is just kind of filling that gap there, right? So we're targeting new customers based on receipt data. We use actual data to prove we're bringing in new customers. And they order directly from the restaurant, which I think is huge. I think like experiencing what you're building right now, experiencing the brand of that restaurant, not only the food, but the whole experience of going to their website, checking out their menu, you know, seeing what dessert you want to get, or you know, however it works. You know, I love it when the restaurant I'm going to was featured on a little blog post or something, and I can meet the owner before I even go to the restaurant. So yeah, we make sure that our customers always interact with that restaurant directly. But I think, you know, most importantly, we prove new profit on every single transaction, or they're not paying. So it's a platform where you don't pay for clicks, you don't pay for impressions. It's kind of like paying for advertising after you know it already worked.
Which is good, which is really good for especially for small business, you know, as we've talked about earlier about how every cent matters. That's fantastic. Is there any other aspect of the business or your experience that you want to talk about that's related to small business before we shift into, because I want to also talk a little bit about how you got to where you are in terms of your college education, growing up, childhood, immigrant family that we mentioned prior to the going live.
You know, what I really think is most important for small businesses is to always, and not even them, even for myself, for everyone really, is to always, you know, want to learn, right? Always want to kind of stay curious and see what the next thing is, what the new problem that's being solved is by which type of media platform, right? I
see.
I think that's really been important all throughout my experience, is just being willing to learn. You know, like even if you just look at, you know, when we met, when I reached out to you for some help running Facebook advertising campaigns, I want to say that you introduced me to Zapier. If I'm yeah. So, you know, before I met you and you introduced me to Zapier, you know, I found Hootsuite, for example, and started kind of scheduling out the posts. And then, you know, just as I stayed in, you know, then I would use reply.io to, you know, automate email marketing campaigns, or Loom to create some short form video content. And I think just being willing to try things and seeing what sticks and seeing what impact it makes. I think that's kind of an ongoing theme that will never go away. Really. Right.
I think you're right. Yeah, and the Loom thing is awesome. I use it all the time now. After you mentioned it, I'm like, oh my God, it's such a great idea. I'm gonna use it for all my client reports and stuff like that. Or
there's been some really cool stuff. I don't know if you ever heard of Everstring before. I think they were actually acquired by Zoom Info, but they use intent data, which is a whole world of its own. You know, imagine being able to find companies that are actively Googling for, you know, video marketing within the last week, and then clicking a button and having the decision maker's name and email within a click, right?
That sounds dirty, man.
Well, you know what it is? It's, every time you go to websites now, it's more and more popular where you're accepting cookies. Or you can take the step and block them, right? I'm pretty sure that's what they're using. I'm pretty sure they use cookies to see. But for the most part, it's all magic to me. I don't know how it works. You know, when I used it, I clicked it, you know, would type in a few things and poof, there it would be. So.
No, you're absolutely right. And
but why not, you know, like make timing easier, right? I mean, it's
why not?
I think so.
Yeah, definitely. And that brings into my attention one of the features that I use for YouTube ads, which is Google search based. So you're talking about intent. So Google search is very search, like purchase intent is already there within the buyer. So for our listeners, I just wanted to take like 1 minute to explain. There's a feature on YouTube ads where you can create custom audiences based on their Google search history, which is something that I'm applying for my dental client right now. Is if someone within like let's say 10-mile radius or 7-mile radius, search dentist near me or terms related to that, they'll keep showing that ad to that person. And that's really relevant for them. It might seem scary for the customer, but it's great for the business because you're always talking to the people. And you know, people may look for a dentist now, but they may not take any action until a couple of months later because, you know, especially if you're switching dentists, it's a huge commitment switch. You have to go through the whole insurance process and things like that. Also, dentists, a lot of people think are scary for some reason. I don't know why. So things like that. I think, you know, having those intent-based capabilities is great for small business, but any kind of business too. And, you know, adding on top of that, all the branding capabilities that you have on both paid media and organic. But yeah, I think
that's a great point. Just to touch on that, you know, I've never been the type to get freaked out by it. I always found it convenient.
Yeah.
You know, I do remember early on having a moment where I'm like, is my phone, you know, listening to my conversations? And then very quickly realizing, like, if it is, and it's all it's doing is giving me relevant ads, I'm like, could be worse.
Making my life easier. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I like the positive viewpoint on that.
Yeah, why fight them, you know? And especially I feel like on so many platforms, you can flick it off if, you know, you don't want personalized ads. And then,
that's right.
You know, you'll see your random vacation ads just like you used to. So.
That's right. All right. Yeah, I want to transition a little bit about your college education, what you studied, with the point of trying to show that, you know, you can study anything in college and it may not even matter in the real working world. I don't know if that applied to you. That definitely applied to me. And, you know, some of the challenges that you faced growing up, going through maybe your early 20s, early years of professional years, because at least for me, I had a lot of issues deciding what I wanted to do, but it ultimately came down to just me deciding I'm just going to pick this. Let's go. So tell me about your college experience.
For sure. Deciding is definitely important. Speaking of which, I was undecided for like my first year or two at my college. We're very much in the same boat, very much on the same page with how we view that. But I ended up majoring in sociology.
Okay.
I minored in philosophy. And I mentioned that just because I took, you know, a ton of really cool philosophy classes that I still like find so intriguing, you know. But I've always found the study of human behavior and human interaction interesting, and the way that people respond to all types of things, right? From business to religion to politics. I ended up just going with something I really enjoyed. And I think that was really important in the long run because, you know, from college, of course, you get the book smarts, right? But then you also get a lot of discipline and, you know, going to school for something that you genuinely enjoy just helps ease you into that discipline, I think. And just makes it such a great experience. You know, I loved going to class. I loved learning more. And I definitely think I could apply it to, you know, my career today. So.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, I didn't have the similar experience. I didn't like going to class. When the classes were recorded online, I would skip it. And
that's why you're an entrepreneur, though. And I'm not.
Maybe. But, you know, it's really important to, I guess, for me, when I was in college, there was a point where I was really stuck. I felt really stuck. What am I going to do? Because, you know, I had the plan of going to dental school, and I eventually got into dental school. I talk about it previously in some other content, but I dropped out because it obviously wasn't fitting for me. But in the middle of college, in my junior year, or was it my sophomore year? I think it was my sophomore year. I was so frustrated. I decided, all right, I'm just going to double major and double minor and see what sticks. So I was doing biology, nutrition, computer science, and business, like completely different stuff. I want to kill myself. But
I'd probably quit too.
But I think the biggest thing that I took away from that experience was if I hadn't exposed myself to those different, I guess, studies, of course, they're just very brief overviews. Like for computer science, I only took one class and quit because I couldn't handle it, the workload with everything else. And also I wasn't good at coding. But, that class in itself taught me a lot about thinking about systems and things more that are more abstract. I could think of it more concisely and more, I guess, more structured as opposed to just leaving it up all up in the air. And that's when I think I really started liking building systems, making really efficient stuff, automation. I love automation, especially with Zapier. Why do things that a robot can do much faster and much more accurately? Because I make a lot of mistakes. I'm not a detailed person. I made a ton of mistake when I was in my lab work with Excel sheets, and I was like, whatever, I'll just create an Excel sheet that automates everything. So I cut down like 8 hours of work into like 5 minutes, which was great. My boss probably didn't know all those details, but whatever. But yeah, I think, going through those different types of experiences is really important to allow you to learn what you don't like and what you do like.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Yeah, and I do kind of think it's like a myth in some extent that like there are definitely some great career paths that start early on, right? If you want to be an attorney, for example, you're going to law school, so you kind of have like a path of the most common successful way to get into law school, right? Yeah. But I think for so many other majors, right, for example, and like there's so many people in my life that don't really know what still they want to do with their careers, right? They might not be exactly where they want to be, or they, maybe not exactly how they envisioned it to be. And I think that's okay. I think, the best thing you can do is start to feel secure in this unsecure type of world that we're in, right? Like that job that you love might not be here in 5 years, right? And it's a bitter pill to swallow, but I think it's very much like the world we live in, right? And I think just like you said, figuring out what you like and what you don't like is really what it comes down to, making your next move, better than your last move, and making sure you're happier with where you land, right?
Yeah. And, it comes with a lot of trial and error, a lot of failures, losing money here and there. When I first started doing all this digital marketing, I would spend thousands of dollars on courses that were not up to par. But those are, I think, at least for me, if I don't like get skin in the game or like pay money or really spend a lot of time, I won't really learn. I can't learn from just reading a textbook or stuff like that. I have to get my hands dirty. I have to really be in there.
Invest in yourself.
Yeah.
So that's so important to do.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit right before we end. Let's talk a little bit about your upbringing as an immigrant family, how that was like. I know you weren't born in a foreign country. You were born right in Chicago, but how was that like growing up? Because I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, I think I definitely had strict parents in to some extent. Maybe I wanted to have a girlfriend in junior high, which what was that, holding hands every weekend for 10 minutes, but I wasn't really allowed to date much in junior high, so it was kind of like breaking down these initial barriers. But it was my parents were great. They were a lot of fun growing up, and it was always fun to see, the differences between my friends whose parents were born in America and my parents, and kind of, poking fun on the differences and the commonalities, and, but yeah, I really enjoyed it at the end of the day. I think it's something unique and something to be proud of, being first generation in a new country is never easy, right?
Yeah. Do you think that had any impact on your professional life? How you handle certain situations, or maybe the perspective that you have?
Yeah, I think I'm just more conscious of people's stories, right?
Mhm.
Of,
Yeah.
you know, where people might have come from, how they landed, where they're, you know, where they landed.
Yeah.
And it really just kind of opened my eyes to not, you know, assume things, right? Which is easier said than done more
Yeah.
often than
Absolutely.
not, I think, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of helps keep you open-minded, I think, is one of the
Mhm.
biggest takeaways.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. Yeah. Especially seeing, at least for me, you know, I had parents that, you know, operated a small business growing up, and just watching them struggle through certain periods, you know, like 2008, no customers. What are we going to do? How are we going to feed the kids? But just seeing that, I think also presents to me how important small business is for people, because it's their lifeline a lot of the times. You know, it is, they invested their entire life into it. So I think, you know, especially with immigrants, you know, it's not just their own like savings or stuff like that. They came to America, they sacrificed everything and invested everything into, you know, whatever they're working on, whether it's their job or small business that they started. And, you know, being able to emphasize with that is such a huge thing.
Yeah, I think, you know, biggest takeaway is hard work with immigrant parents. You know, my dad always had multiple jobs while I was growing up. He was, you know, up and leaving for work at 1 a.m. and I wouldn't see
Oh
him
my
until 9
God.
sometimes. And that was, you know, 6, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And you know, everyone, even my aunt,
Mhm.
you know, she came and just started just hustling and learning. You know, now she's pretty high up in the corporate world and
Wow.
in her field.
Mhm.
And the hard work came first. You
Mhm.
know, the kind of discipline to just learn what you got to learn, and do what you have to do to, you know,
Yeah.
you help enough people get what they want and you'll get what
Mhm.
you want eventually, right?
Yep. Yep. That's right. Yeah. Eat a lot of dirt along the way. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think just seeing my dad, you know, just like your dad, working 7 days a week, nonstop, um, like just working a lot is just, it's normal for us. I mean, of course, not to the extent of like I don't have personal life where I can't spend time with my wife and stuff like that. But you know, it's never a moment of oh, I feel like I'm working too much or stuff like that, where I start to question my own decisions about the decision that I make, I guess. But yeah, thank you, Shane, for coming on this podcast and sharing your experience and sharing your 2 cents. Where can people connect with you? On LinkedIn mostly?
Yeah, LinkedIn's good. You can
Mm-hmm.
catch me on there. Shoot me a message. It was awesome catching up with you, Isaac. We'll have to do
Yeah.
this more often.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it won't be recorded. Maybe it will be.
Yeah, it
But
doesn't have to be recorded.
yeah, I'm excited to follow along on your podcast journey here too. So
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm gonna end the podcast, but you can stick around for a couple more minutes if you want to chat. Thank you,
for
everyone.
sure.